Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isaac Colbert, and I'm Associate Dean of the Graduate School here at MIT. On behalf of MIT and the MLK Memorial Celebration Committee, let me welcome all of you to this 18th annual celebration of the life and work of a great American leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Let me also thank you for braving the frigid weather to be with us today. It seems that on most occasions, we have weather like this, and it's nice to see that in spite of it, people choose to attend the ceremony. The theme for this year's observance, as well as for the third annual conference on youth, is what messages help youth realize their dreams: media, music, models, and microchips. In these yearly celebrations, we continue our focus on youth, not only to help young people better understand the significance of Dr. King's life and legacy and how it affects their lives today, but also to stimulate our youngsters into developing their own visions and their own dreams and making them a reality. Before we begin our program today, I would like to recognize a number of people who have provided support for this year's celebration, but whose names do not appear in the program. Serving as our ushers here in Kresge today are Derek Forbes, Vanda Merriman, Christala Jones, Camille Anderson, Portia Parkinson, and Fritz Francis. In the stirring entertainment in Lobby 7 this afternoon was provided by Aida Mtembu, Ruben Morfin, Nancy Martin, and Gerald Priolo. And a special thanks today to Mrs. Rebecca Vest for her help with this morning's breakfast in honor of our keynote speaker. Now, I'd like to draw your attention in the program to a number of things that you really should not miss and be aware of. Excuse me. This weekend is the Conference on Youth, which is sponsored by the Community Fellows Program. Its theme of media, music, microchips, and models provides some important input today to our youth. We hope you'll be able to attend it. Participants are asked to make a $5 donation to help defray the cost of this conference, but if you're not able to do that, no one will be turned away. I urge you to attend this important conference. Saturday evening, here in this auditorium, there will be a marvelous performance by Semenya McCord and her associates entitled Journey into a Dream, a musical tribute to Martin Luther King, Jr. And if you have not seen Ms. McCord and her associates perform, I think you're in for a real treat, and I urge you to come to that. This evening, beginning at 5 o'clock, pardon me, this evening beginning at 5 o'clock, there will be an important exhibit getting underway by a black artist, Valerie Maynard. That exhibit is entitled No Apartheid Anywhere, and it is one of the first exhibits of this size and scope by a black artist at MIT. She does marvelous work. I think all of you should visit it. It is in the Compton Gallery in Building 10, just through the main lobby and into the second rotunda. She has her opening at 5 o'clock, and her exhibit will continue through most of the following week. Finally, I'd like to invite all of you to attend the lecture entitled Getting Smart by this year's Martin Luther King Jr. scholar, who is Dr. Jeffrey Howard of the Efficacy Institute. That will be again Tuesday, January 21st at 3 p.m. in Building 2, Room 105. Dr. Howard has worked for many years on issues of educating our youth, and he has some important things to say, not only to the MIT community, but to the broader communities of Cambridge and Boston. I urge you to be there. And now on with our program. We will begin our program this morning with an invocation. Leading us in a prayer that will both stimulate us and warm us will be the Reverend Cassandra Brown, who is Associate Minister of the Western Avenue Baptist Church here in Cambridge. Reverend Brown.
Would you stand with me for the invocation, please? Father, it's truly a privilege and an honor to be here. Lord, we see from the gathering that we've come a long way. We stand and sit in the midst of an auditorium, Lord, of one of the best-known universities in the nation, possibly in the world for engineering and technology. We sit, Lord God, together, people of color, all races, all mixtures, none fearing one another, Lord. Truly, we've come a long way. Father, we come today to commemorate and celebrate the life of one of your lights, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Lord, whose light was quenched because the darkness did not understand it and could not comprehend it. But today, Lord God, we gather stating that we comprehend it, that we understand it, and indeed we desire to keep that flame going a little bit longer. Lord, in the words of a Negro slave, we're not where we used to be. We're not where we're going to be. We're not as far as we need to be, Lord, but we praise you because we're not what we used to be. We've changed, Lord, and it's because of the life of Dr. King. Now, Lord, we commit ourselves anew in your service. Lord, understanding that you have given equity to all people, that we were all created in your image. Lord, therefore, each life is valuable. We thank you for the message that he taught and that he lived. And we thank you, Lord, that today we stand together unified, working to bring about his goal, working to see his vision and his dream realized. We thank you for him, dear God. We thank you for all those who are assembled and ask, Lord, that you bless our efforts today, that you help us to continue on in the dream and to one day make that dream a lasting and a living reality. Father, we said at the decade, Lord, where we're entering the 21st century. Father, King has long since died, but the dream lives on, yet not accomplished. We ask, Lord, for the vision, for the strength, and for the drive to accomplish the dream today. We thank you, Lord, again for this opportunity. We thank you, Lord, for your servant, and we pray for the ability to work continuously as your servants, not fearing any man, but working together, Lord, understanding that once we are united, we will not fall. Once we are united, we will not be divided by any foe. And understanding that perfect love casts out all fear. Teach us to love one another, Lord. Teach us to live as your servant lived. And not only to remember him, but to enact his goals and his visions, to make those real again in our own lives. Understanding that as long as we chase after his vision, he really will never die. Again, oh God, we come before you saying thank you and praising you for your greatness and your goodness and for your servant, Dr. King. In your son's name we pray, amen. Now we'll join together and sing what has become the Negro national anthem. Lift every voice and sing. It's found on the back of your programs. We'll sing all three verses. Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high take your seats.
I don't know about you, but I'm inspired. For each year's program, we invite young people from MIT and from the surrounding community to share with us their perspectives on the significance of Dr. King and his work. This year, we are very pleased to have with us from the Cambridge Rindge and Latin School, Mr. Augustin Onyegoro and Ms. Tiniola Adewale, and from MIT, Ms. Davida Johnson and Mr. Marcus Allen Gilbert. Mr. Onyegoro and Ms. Adewale will give their presentations together, followed by Ms. Johnson and Mr. Gilbert.
To President Vest, to our esteemed speaker, to the other members of today's program, and to you, our audience, we bid you a fond good afternoon. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to come before you, along with my good friend and fellow Upward Bound student, Tiniola, to commemorate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Given the theme of this year's program, media, music, models, and microchips, and their role in the realization of dreams, Tiniola and I will explore the dream of Martin Luther King, Jr. as healer of community and country. Today marks a celebration of what would have been the 63rd birthday of Martin Luther King, Jr., and on this day, we should give pause for reflection.
When I think about the relatively brief life of Martin Luther King, Jr., I am filled with feelings of both joy and sadness. Joy because he lived, and through his life's work, he made our country confront its hostility, prejudice, ignorance, and fear, and thereby challenged us to work together to make America truly the land of freedom, justice, equality, opportunity, and brotherhood. And sadness because a senseless and cowardly act of violence cut short his life and thereby deprived my generation of the opportunity to personally experience all that is and was Martin Luther King, Jr. Dr. King should be an inspiration to us every day, for thanks to his many contributions, we are free to dream. We can dream of a time when all things negative in this country will be eliminated. We can dream of times of great prosperity in our community, and we can dream about the many personal and professional successes we will achieve. We can dream about these things and more. However, today we must ask ourselves, how will we get there from here?
25 years ago, in his last address to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King addressed the same question when he said, "Now, in order to answer the question, where do we go from here? We must first honestly recognize where we are now. When the Constitution was written, a strange formula to determine taxes and representation declared that the Negro was 60% of a person. Today, another curious formula seems to declare that he is 50% of a person. Of the good things in life, the Negro has approximately 1/2 those of whites. Of the bad things of life, he has twice those of whites. Thus, half of all Negroes live in substandard housing, and Negroes have half the income of whites. When we view the negative experiences of life, the Negro has a double share. There are twice as many unemployed. The rate of infant mortality among Negroes is double that of whites, and there are twice as many Negroes dying in war as whites in proportion to their size in the population. In other spheres, the figures are equally alarming. In elementary schools, Negroes lag 1 to 3 years behind whites, and their segregated schools receive substantially less money per student than the white schools. 1/20th as many Negroes as whites attend college. Of employed Negroes, 75% hold menial jobs."
While I was not born at the time Dr. King made this address, I believe his assessment of the day's problems would be fairly accurate if applied today. So where do we go from here? If we return to that same Southern Christian Leadership Conference address, Dr. King provided a prescription for an ailing black community in America when he said, "First, we must massively assert our dignity and worth. We must stand up amidst a system that still oppresses us and develop an unassailable and majestic sense of values. We must no longer be ashamed of being black." Another basic challenge is to discover how to organize our strength in terms of economic and political power. Indeed, one of the great problems that the Negro faces is the lack of power. Stripped of the right to make decisions concerning his life and destiny, the Negro has been subjected to the authoritarian and sometimes whimsical decisions of the white power structure. The plantation and ghetto were created by those who had power, both to confine those who had no power and to perpetuate their powerlessness. The problem of transforming the ghetto, therefore, is a problem of power confrontation of the forces of power demanding change and the forces of power dedicated to the preserving of the status quo. There is nothing wrong with power if power is used correctly. One of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites, so that love is identified with a resignation of power and power with a denial of love. Now we've got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. What has happened is that we have had it wrong and confused in our own country, and this has led Negro Americans in the past to seek their goals through power devoid of love and conscience. This is leading a few extremists today to advocate for Negroes, the same destructive and conscienceless power that they have justly abhorred in whites. It is precisely this collision of immoral power with powerless morality which constitutes the major crisis of our times.
We must develop a program that will drive the nation to a guaranteed annual income. We've come a long way in our understanding of human motivation and of the blind operation of our economic system. Now we realize that the dislocations in the market operations of our economy and the prevalence of discrimination thrust people into idleness and bind them in constant or frequent unemployment against their will. We also know that no matter how dynamically the economy develops and expands, it does not eliminate all poverty. The problem indicates that our emphasis must be twofold. We must create full employment or we must create incomes. Our country can do this. If our nation can spend $35 billion a year to fight an unjust, evil war in Vietnam, and $20 billion to put a man on the moon, it can spend billions of dollars to put God's children on their own 2 feet, right here on earth.
Now let me say briefly that we must reaffirm our commitment to nonviolence. The futility of violence in the struggle for racial justice has been tragically etched in all the recent Negro riots. At best, the riots have produced a little additional anti-poverty money and a few sprinklers to cool the children of the ghettos. Nowhere have the riots won any concrete improvements, such as have the organized protest demonstrations. No internal revolution has ever succeeded in overthrowing a government by violence unless the government had already lost the allegiance and effective control of its armed forces. Anyone in his right mind knows that this will not happen in the United States. Furthermore, few, if any, violent revolutions have been successful unless the violent minority had the sympathy and support of the non-resistant majority. It is perfectly clear that a violent revolution on the part of American blacks would find no sympathy and support from whites and very little from the majority of Negroes themselves. And so I say to you that I still stand by nonviolence.
And the other thing is that I am concerned about a better world. I'm concerned about justice. I'm concerned about brotherhood. I'm concerned about truth. And when one is concerned about these, he can never advocate violence. For through violence you may murder a murderer, but you can't murder murder. Through violence you may murder a liar, but you can't establish truth. Through violence you may murder a hater, but you can't murder hate. Darkness cannot put out darkness. Only light can do that. And I say to you that I have also decided to stick to love.
I want to say to you as I move to my conclusion, as we talk about where we go from here, that we honestly face the fact that the movement must address itself to the question of restructuring the whole of American society. There are 40 million poor people here, and one day we must ask the question, why are there 40 million poor people in America? And when you ask that question, you're raising questions about the economic system, about a broader distribution of wealth. And I'm simply saying that more and more, we've got to begin to ask questions about the whole society. What I'm saying to you is that communism forgets that life is individual. Capitalism forgets that life is social. And the kingdom of brotherhood is found neither in the thesis of communism nor the antithesis of capitalism, but in a higher synthesis. It is found in a higher synthesis that combines the truth of both. Now, when I say question the whole society, it means ultimately coming to see that the problem of racism, the problem of economic exploitation, and the problem of war are all tied together.
So I conclude by saying that we have a task, and let's go out with a divine dissatisfaction. Let us be dissatisfied until America will no longer have a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds. Let us be dissatisfied until the tragic walls that separate the outer city of wealth and the comfort from the inner city of poverty and despair shall be crushed by the battering rams of the forces of justice. Let us be dissatisfied until those that live on the outskirts of hope are brought into the metropolis of daily security. Let us be dissatisfied until integration is not seen as a problem, but as an opportunity to participate in the beauty of diversity. Let us be dissatisfied until men and women, however black they may be, will be judged on the basis of the content of their character and not on the basis of the color of their skin. Let us be dissatisfied, and men will recognize that out of one blood, God made all men to dwell upon the face of the earth. Let us be dissatisfied. Let us be dissatisfied until that day when nobody will shout white power, when nobody will shout black power, but everybody will talk about God's power and human power. In closing, when one considers Dr. King's address of 25 years ago, his words were prophetic then, and they still represent a plausible course of action if we would only dare to dream. On behalf of Tinuola and myself, we thank you.
Good afternoon. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a man dedicated to the life of God. Through his divine faith and eternal hope, not only did he never lose sight of his dream, he gave his life to make it come true. Throughout my life, I have experienced different types of struggles, whether it be a confrontation with my mirror image, a fight between good and evil, the betrayal of a close friend, or the loss of a loved one. It's very hard to see the light when it seems that darkness rules the world. It's very hard to swim to the top if an anchor is pulling you down. It's difficult to see where you're going if a blindfold is tied around your eyes. It's almost impossible to jump off a building and survive, and it's hard to live your dream when many want it to be your worst nightmare. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. educated many, but most importantly to me, he inspired us to have the faith that we are doing the right thing and to have hope that our dreams will become real. Because of Dr. Martin Luther King, through all of my past and future difficulties, I will never lose sight of my dreams, but I will make them happen. You have all heard the phrase of Dr. King, if a man hasn't found something worth dying for, he isn't fit to live. I have witnessed this very statement. If I only see value by materialistic measures, if I only give expecting a return, if I only see success through selfish eyes, then the changes I've made would be the same as if I haven't been born at all. Thank you.
Although delivered in 1963, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech means the past, the present, and the future to me. It means the past because it symbolizes the plight of the African American and recognizes the burning desire of those oppressed to breathe free. It recognizes the violent struggle that blacks have faced over the years. Even in the darkest hour, the sweltering summer of Negroes' legitimate discontent, as King called it, we remained undaunted. I see the fervor of my black ancestors through my parents. When a recording of this famous speech is played on television, my parents focus on the screen with a solemn concentration and pride as they become mindful of their own trials and tribulations in their path to fulfill the dream. This speech means the present because recognizing the present means recognizing that the dream is not yet reality. Ethnic violence still persists, and as King says, we cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. Recognizing the speech also means recognizing responsibility. My responsibility, our responsibility. In his speech, Martin Luther King says, "Now is the time." Well, now is still the time, and now is our time. I, as a black man, have the responsibility to combat the ills of our society and uphold the legacy of my people. Recognizing the dream also means looking forward toward the future. The catalyst that makes dreams become reality is time. As Martin Luther King states, 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. We must remember that the dream is a beginning, and we must work toward the end. We must also realize that at times we are shrinking away as a nation instead of progressing towards our American dream. For me, the dream means working today towards a better tomorrow while reflecting on the contributions of our mothers and fathers. Remember to keep dreaming. Thank you.
Certainly hearing the eloquence and the conviction of young people like these should really help us all to realize that maybe, just maybe yet, this country will be left in some good hands. Let's hope so. Join me again in a round of applause for them. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the president of MIT, Dr. Charles M. Vest, who will introduce our keynote speaker for the day. Dr. Vest.
Thank you very much, Ike. I'm pleased to add my welcome to MIT's 18th annual celebration of the life and work and ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The theme of this year's observance has to do with the messages that this society sends its young people, and of the influence those messages have on the development of their dreams. Messages are conveyed in many ways, through popular culture, through the content of our curricula and the conduct of our classes, through the laws that we pass and the leaders we elect, through the symbolic events that we choose to celebrate. This year, 1992, is remarkable for the several major anniversaries that our society is marking. It is the 500th anniversary of Columbus's voyage to this hemisphere, a voyage of discovery, to be sure, but discovery of a world and a people which were here long before 1492. It is the 300th anniversary of the Salem witch trials, a period that reminds us all of the dangers of ignorance and intolerance. We have just celebrated the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights, one of the most important social contracts in history. However, we continue to struggle to ensure that all citizens truly receive the full benefits of this great contract. And it has been just 63 years from the day that Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. was born and almost a quarter of a century since he died. The events that we choose to commemorate are important. They send powerful messages about the culture and values of our society, just as the actions of our institutions do. Today, I would like to raise some concerns about the messages that this country, this institution, convey to our young people, sometimes purposefully, sometimes inadvertently. First, I am concerned about the message contained in a government ruling that federal funds cannot be used forthrightly to support scholarship and fellowship programs for minority students, and that colleges and universities may not even be able to solicit funds for such programs from private sources. I believe that this country should be willing and able to make an investment in the years of education and training, particularly at the graduate level, that are necessary to make the full range of educational and career options open and available to people of color. Second, I am concerned about the message that is sent to our students, all of our students, when they do not see the changing face of America reflected in our faculty. At MIT, we have demonstrated leadership in enrolling undergraduates with a diversity of ethnic and racial backgrounds. But one of the most pressing challenges is to encourage more students, particularly students of color, to pursue graduate studies and academic careers. This is not easy to do when there are so few role models for them to observe and follow. Third, I am concerned about the message that is sent to our minority staff members when they see that the senior administrators are still overwhelmingly white. I've been asked, quite frankly, whether there is a glass ceiling for minority administrative staff at MIT. We certainly do not intend for there to be one, but we clearly have to do much more to promote the career development of all of our administrators at the Institute. If we are to counter these messages, we need to state clearly in words and, more importantly, in actions, what it is we really want this institution to be. Well, what can I report after 1 year in office? First, with regard to financial aid programs for minority students, we are working through the various national higher education consortia to send strong and unified message that scholarship programs in this country need to be designed to encourage full and open educational access to students of every race. Beyond that, MIT is engaged in litigation with the Department of Justice over the way in which we administer our financial aid programs. We have admitted our students on the basis of academic merit, and we provide financial aid based solely on the student's economic need. We have met together with other universities to make sure for those students admitted to more than one of our institutions that we have had the same understanding of that student's financial circumstances. And then we awarded financial aid on the basis of the family's ability to pay, not on their academic credentials, not on their athletic skill. We think this is the right thing, and it is an approach that serves our neediest students, many of whom, unfortunately, are students of color. On the faculty side, we have put in place new programs to recruit minority faculty and women faculty. The provost, Mark Wrighton, has asked each department to designate a faculty member who has the responsibility to develop lists of possible candidates for faculty positions, and they have done so. In addition, we have provided special funding to bring visiting scholars and lecturers to campus. We will provide departments with additional resources and scholars' allowances to help support new minority or women faculty members. And when a department finds such a candidate for a faculty position but does not have a specific opening, we will provide funding for that position. This is a new program just begun this fall, but I have every hope that in the long run it will make a difference, because a difference is needed. I have to tell you that I am unhappy with the lack of progress that we have made on this front this year, but I am encouraged by the response of the departments to these new efforts, and I hope that I will have a much brighter message to report to you next year at this time. With regard to minority administrators, last fall, I appointed a working group to develop specific strategies for increasing the number of minority administrators at senior levels in particular at the Institute and for enhancing their career growth here. I know that this group is hard at work, and I expect to receive their recommendations in the coming month or two. And what about the students? One of our great hopes for the future, indeed our best hope, rests, as you have seen this morning, with our students. We need to reach out to bring talented students here and to encourage them in the pursuit of graduate studies and academic careers. This is what is going to lead to full participation by all of our citizens in this increasingly technology-based society. In this regard, I think our efforts to improve the quality of education, particularly science and mathematics education, in our primary and secondary schools will make a difference in the number of minority students who will be prepared for education at places like MIT. And I am very pleased with the new efforts on behalf of the graduate school to encourage more African Americans and Hispanics to come to Cambridge, to come to MIT, to pursue their graduate studies. These are a few of the things that we have launched in the past year, but I'm quick to add we have not seen a real payoff yet. But I am encouraged by a new sense of commitment, of working together to develop ideas and programs that will make a real difference. For the issue, in my view, is not one of so-called mainstream MIT, allowing or permitting different kinds of people to come here. It is not that, rather it is one of becoming a different kind of place, one that draws on the full range of talents and ideas of all of the members of its community. To do this, we need to work together for common goals. With your help, I am confident that we can make a difference and that we will. Thank you very much. It is now my very great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Margaret Burnham is a civil rights attorney and lecturer in political science that we are fortunate to have here at MIT. In the early 1970s, she was staff attorney to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, where she worked on school desegregation and student rights causes in the South. She first came to national public prominence in 1972 when she served as the defense counsel to the civil rights activist Angela Davis. In 1977, she became the first African American woman to serve as a judge in Massachusetts when she was appointed by then Governor Michael Dukakis to serve as a Boston municipal court judge. In this capacity, she paid special attention to the representation of indigent defendants and the treatment of women by our courts. She served on the bench for 6 years before resigning the life-tenured position to become director of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Judge Burnham is now a partner in the first African American woman law firm in New England, Burnham, Hines, and Dilday. She is chair of the Massachusetts Committee for Public Counsel Services, the state agency responsible for the defense of indigent clients, and she is also chair of the Fund for a Free South Africa. As a lecturer in political science at MIT, her teaching and research interests are in the areas of constitutional, criminal, civil rights, and discrimination law. As our keynote speaker this afternoon, she will be speaking to us about Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., his times, our times. Judge Burnham.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President Vest, for that warm welcome. And thank you, City Year, for coming out in force today. The Upward Bound program, members of the Community Fellows program, Thank you for inviting me to participate in what has been a long tradition here of trying to build community on Martin Luther King's birthday. As Justin and Tiniola so well said, Martin Luther King would have been but 63 years old on January 15th, 1992, if he had not been struck down by a bullet in Memphis. 63, the age of our neighbors, our colleagues, our fathers, our mothers, our teachers, our mentors, and our leaders. Not an old man, our contemporary. It's perhaps this nearness that makes Dr. King's birthday celebration so unique and so different from the other national days of memorial that we as a country commemorate. Martin is still very much flesh and blood to us, bone and fiber, tears and sweat. He has only just left us. His deep baritone voice, as we heard it, as we came in to this hall, still an echo in our ears, much like a room freshly vacated. Even if only through the pages of our daily newspapers, many of us in this hall knew Martin Luther King. Some of us who are here walked down the same roads he walked down. Others who are here may have scorned his methods as too conciliatory, even as we were uplifted by his spirituality and his perseverance. Others of us, also here today, may have raised our eyebrows at strokes that seemed too bold and too risky for a country only just getting accustomed to the end of Jim Crow. Most of us who are here were alive on April 4th, 1968, and shuddered and then moaned together as a country as Martin faltered and then collapsed on the Lorraine Hotel balcony. So fresh, so raw and haunting is the memory of Martin's death, his blood spilling out over his colleagues Ralph Abernathy and Andrew Young and James Bevel, that the birthday we mark every January seems as much funereal as it does celebratory. In a sense, then, this holiday, when we come together to honor Martin, we also come together to walk back into our own lives as much as to reflect on Martin King's short but rich sojourn with us. It is, as Davida and Marcus have told us, an annual journey in quest of the answers to two interlocking questions: the meaning of his life and time and its bearing on our own lives today. Thus, January 15th has never been a static memorial to a dead and fossilized hero, nor can we permit the story of Dr. King and the movement he represents to be co-opted and diluted, commercialized and canonized under the undifferentiating spotlight of a national holiday. It is still our movement, and it is we who must define it. It is far too soon to wrap up our Martin Luther King celebrations in rigid rituals commemorating an untouchable icon of a bygone era. First of all, because the history we commemorate today is the story of what happened just yesterday, and the details have yet to be fully unfolded. And secondly, because Dr. King's vision, what school children everywhere have been taught to call the King dream, was meant to be a yardstick against which we might measure our progress as a people and as a nation. And that assessing and taking stock of that we do today suggests a fluid process, a process of interpreting the events of the past in the context of today's reality. Surely the realities of our lives have vastly changed since the 1960s, but in ways that seem to render the vision of the movement a distant mirage, even while we as a people take on new shape and form and visibility on the American landscape. We African Americans are at the same time both more empowered and more impoverished now than we were then, and surely we must ask about that contradiction. Let me return to the first question. What was the movement of which Dr. King was a part? What was his role in that movement? How did he come into the leadership of that movement? Would that movement have taken a different shape had he not been there at all? Or had he not been assassinated when he was? Would the picture of the movement have been altered if King had not been so much a part of that picture? What were the unique dimensions of the relationship between this individual of powerful and universal voice, himself a very reluctant leader, and a movement that sought to lift up those who had been voiceless and whom few white persons wished to hear, persons very unlike the articulate and dynamic Martin Luther King? It is this history that scholars are now piecing together, beginning to emerge as the density and complexity of a grassroots movement across the South that laid the groundwork for the now famous campaigns in which Dr. King played so instrumental a role. Robert Moses likens this movement to a huge ocean, its waves peaking and then subsiding over and over again. The peaks were high moments when the organizing efforts of scores of years would come to fruition. Montgomery, Alabama was such a peak, and only now, 1992, are we beginning to uncover the layers of Rosa Parks' stance and of Dr. King's emergence onto the national scene in Montgomery. Through the stories of women like Joanne Robinson, a longtime leader of the Women's Political Council in Montgomery, we've begun to learn about the predecessor movements to the Montgomery Improvement Association. The Women's Political Council had been protesting segregated buses for several years before the arrest of Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks did not just arise one morning and decide to make history. Rather, she was part of a long movement protesting segregation on the school buses. We also know now that we've gotten and are telling our school children a distorted version of exactly what the demands were in Montgomery in respect to desegregation of the school buses. At that time, the practice in Montgomery, Alabama, where 70% of the people who rode those buses were black, was that whites filled up all of the seats until we reached the middle point of the bus, and then blacks filled up all the seats, and if more whites got on the bus, then those blacks who were seated from the rear to the middle would have to get up and give up their seats. I always was under the view that the Montgomery movement's claims that the demand of the Montgomery movement was to end segregation in its entirety on the school buses, on the buses in Montgomery, but no, it was a much more modest demand. What those in Montgomery were asking for was an end to the practice whereby blacks had to yield their seats if whites overflowed into their half of the bus. What was being asked for simply was equal space on the bus, not an end to the blacks in the back and whites in the front practice. And it was that very modest request which was refused and denied, and which led to 13 months of protest and of walking and of riding in neighbors' cars and of carpooling in Montgomery, Alabama. That was a wave on the ocean. The organization of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, by Ella Baker was a wave on that ocean, as was the entire Mississippi movement, a movement whose dimensions we are only now beginning to define for ourselves, a movement so painfully misshapen and misrepresented in the public imagination by the film Mississippi Burning some years ago. Charismatic leaders, Martin, yes, but also Bob Moses himself, Fannie Lou Hamer, and in another context, Malcolm X, were all peaks and waves on that ocean. Surely Dr. King saw how deep that ocean was and how wide it stretched, for he prophesied repeatedly that although he might not see that movement to its end, its work would nonetheless go on. In his last days, in the speech he gave the night before he died, he told us, "I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop and I don't mind. Like anybody, I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned with that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." He knew somehow that he would not be with us, but that the ocean would keep roaring on. One cannot comprehend Dr. King without filling out the pages of the movement's history book. And if that movement was an ocean, we have yet to learn what all the forces were that caused it to dry up. Similarly, as time begins to rest more comfortably on our collective memories of Dr. King, and as we draw back from the shock of his martyrdom, we will be able to look more accurately at the impact of his political philosophy on the movement and its legacy. Questions abound for venturesome scholars and activists and organizers here. If nonviolence was a way of life for Dr. King, was it ever more than a momentary strategy and tactic for the masses who made up the movement? Could any differences be drawn between the adherents to nonviolence among those in the South and movement activists in the urban North? And if there were differences, what were the moral and religious antecedents of these differing approaches to our struggle? Where, if at all, can the remnants of Dr. King's nonviolent social action be found in today's political life? These are questions to which we have yet to uncover the answers. With time, too, perhaps the official version of Dr. King's murder will warrant closer scrutiny, just as Oliver Stone's JFK has served to focus a critical public lens upon the official JFK assassination story. It was not until almost 10 years after Dr. King was killed that the American public learned the disgusting truth about the protracted campaign launched against Dr. King by the FBI. His hotel rooms bugged, his SCLC staff infiltrated, poisoned letters sent to him, constant visual surveillance, telephone threats. As Dr. King himself described it, the FBI was much like the KKK, quote, out to break me, unquote. We now know, too, that FBI files documented no fewer than 50 threats against Dr. King's life. Finally, the full details of the days leading up to Dr. King's assassination in Memphis have been stingily parsed out bit by bit, and it cannot yet be said that we have the whole picture. We know, for example, that among Dr. King's associates in Memphis was an FBI informant, that police plants had infiltrated the Memphis Invaders, a militant group of young men who had precipitated a violent clash with the police at a march led by Dr. King days before he died. And we know also that a young black man who observed the shooting of Dr. King and who claimed at the time of Dr. King's shooting that he was a member of the Invaders, ultimately we've discovered was in fact an undercover member of the Memphis Police Department, one of the few people who observed the events from that balcony at the Lorraine Hotel. We also know that Dr. King deeply despaired of the violence that had broken out in Memphis during the protest demonstration he held there late in March. Violence that we now know, but at the time he did not know, had been inspired by police infiltrators. He felt his message of nonviolence was losing his appeal. And we know from an FBI telephone bug of his conversation with a friend that he said, all I'm saying is that Roy, and I'm quoting from Dr. King, all I'm saying is that Roy Wilkins and others, the Negroes who are influenced by what they read in the newspapers, they will say, Martin Luther King is dead, he's finished, his nonviolence is nothing, no one is listening to it. He was deeply troubled and in despair by what had occurred. And indeed, after that march in Memphis, the New York Times called the Memphis violence, which had led to the death of a young demonstrator, quote unquote, a powerful embarrassment to Dr. King. And the Times recommended that Dr. King call off his Poor People's Campaign, which he was then in the midst of organizing. Thus, the Memphis violence, which had been generated by the police, had left Dr. King personally demoralized and politically at sea. Surely, as far as J. Edgar Hoover was concerned, nothing could have pleased him more. It was J. Edgar who, you will remember, had widely proclaimed Dr. King as public enemy number one. For the Martin Luther King of 1968 was, politically speaking, a far more complex and threatening man than the leader of the Montgomery and Birmingham and Albany campaigns. Having tried virtually in vain to budge the race and class structures of Chicago with his Operation Breadbasket, Dr. King was now articulating a far broader program. A year to the date prior to his murder, on April 4th of 1967, at his famous Riverside Church address, he had uncategorically condemned the Vietnam War, denouncing the United States as the, quote, greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. He later warned black folk that, quote, we can't solve our problems now until there's a radical redistribution of economic and political power in America. And he urged a recognition of the reality that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together, and you really can't get rid of one without getting rid of the other. While today's ear might perhaps not cringe at these stark truisms, Dr. King paid a high price for his embrace of a more radical perspective, especially in regard to the Vietnam War. Public opinion polls at the time showed that 73% of Americans disagreed with his opposition to the Vietnam War, that 60% believed his position on the war would hurt the civil rights agenda. And blacks were not altogether enthusiastic about his move onto what they considered to be foreign political turf either. Only 25% of black respondents agreed with Dr. King's position on the war. 48% thought he was wrong. At the same time as his popularity was declining because of his alliance with the peace movement, his anti-war positions, forces far more radical than Dr. King, the Black Panther Party, for example, were emerging out of the rubble of the 1965 Watts explosion as a challenge on his left. Thus, Dr. King was poised on shifting political ground, reaching out to embrace new coalitions and causes while holding on to the tenets of nonviolence in the face of urban rebellions and a militant Black Power movement. Had he been able to enhance his leadership role in these circumstances with his message of economic equality, Dr. King would surely have been an even more threatening force to deal with. It was the more mature Martin, the more seasoned Martin, the Martin who believed, as he put it, that the whole structure of American life must be changed, and not the Martin who dreamed of black and white school children attending class together. It was that Martin who was killed in 1968. And if he is to be transformed into a national icon, then it is our place not to permit that to happen by cutting off the legs on which Dr. King finally stood. Furthermore, we may yet conclude that his death was not the result of a government conspiracy, but nevertheless, it seems manifest that certain elements of the government were happy to see him go when he did. In light of this political reality, the loose ends still dangling from the several investigations into the King assassination demand honest examination and resolution. The two questions to explore at a King commemoration are closely related, I suggested when we began, and as did my fellow speakers from this podium. First, what is our contemporary understanding of Dr. King and his world? And second, how does the vision of the movement bear on our own circumstances? We cast an eye back, and then, wearing the eyes of Dr. King and of the movement of that day, we look around at ourselves and assess our own reality. If it accomplished little else, the movement threw off America's blinders and rendered visible Ralph Ellison's man. The Negro was no longer a silent sufferer. She had a voice and a vision. She could be seen and heard. Herbert Lee, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, Amzie Moore, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin. What would they see today? What happened after they were all killed for believing that black folk had a right to be seen? Surely they would see that the civil rights agenda that they had so carefully constructed had indeed been successfully enshrined in the law books, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Public Accommodations Act. But could we blame their curiosity, nay, more likely their anger, when they discovered that the written word, compromised though it had been by a hostile Supreme Court, that word belied a woeful reality? That we African Americans remain twice as unemployed as whites, that we only earn $56 for every $100 that whites earn, that a white who has a high school degree earns more money on average than one of us who is a college graduate, that we are only 3% of the Ivy League college enrollment, that we are less than one of every 30 grad students in a graduate school, that we die younger, and that the morbidity gap between black and white is in 1992 widening, that 56% of us looking for housing confront and have to deal with housing discrimination, that 6 in 10 of all the newspapers in the country have no black professionals on their staff, that at MIT only 14 of 957 faculty members, or only 1%, are black, that the African male has joined the condor and others as an endangered species. But perhaps more telling than our worsening statistical profile, which was described by both Davida and Marcus earlier, perhaps more telling than those familiar statistics would be the palpable despair that has settled over our communities, communities of color, not only African American, but Hispanic communities of color across this country. A deep depression that seems to signal an utter loss of the ennobling and unifying spirit of our old movement. We witness it in the disdain for human life manifested in the fratricide among our young people, the homicide, in the violence against African American women that is so common today, in the nihilistic, self-deprecating, and materialistic cultural expression of our young people, matters which will be a subject of discussion as this conference proceeds through the next few days. Where, we should ask, is the love of community, the self-love, symbolized by our joyful proclamation that black is beautiful, symbolized by our reach for black power of 10 and 15 years ago? Where is that love of self and of community? And what of the backlash of the 90s? Surely Dr. King would strip away the new veneer stretched taut over the old racist shibboleths, and he could see the race-baiting demon of the 60s behind the affirmative action quota preference debate, providing national politicians with an opportunity to, at the same time, distract attention from the national disgrace that passes for an economy, while scapegoating and pointing the finger at African Americans. As well, Dr. King would doubtless see the attack on multicultural education and Afrocentric study as an effort to undermine the campaign to open the university doors to new thinking and to new thinkers. Here I can't help but mention that presidential candidate Buchanan pulled the veil off of some of these backlashers and showed their true stripes when, at the beginning of his campaign, he pledged that he would not stand idly by while Western Judeo-Christian culture was thrown into a, quote, landfill called multiculturalism. Those movement eyes glancing forward to the black world of the 90s would no doubt be surprised as well to find deep ideological fissures among black activists and thinkers, divisions that are themselves a reflection of the political disquiet and dissonance experienced by a community that sees itself left in the dust of a technological revolution and that therefore is turning hard new corners in search of answers anywhere. Dr. King, the drum major for peace, would surely be sorrowed to hear America's newest black hero, General Colin Powell, claim of his purported enemy, first we're going to cut off their legs and then we're going to kill them. And what would he say of the cynical replacement of the civil rights movement's bright light, Thurgood Marshall, with Clarence Thomas, a man who has scorned the civil rights leadership and caricatured them as a bunch of do-nothing whiners looking for handouts? Dr. King went straight to the heart of the matter in condemning the blight of poverty. He once remarked, "Most of the poor people in this country are working every day, but earning so little they cannot begin to function in the mainstream of the economic life of our nation. They're working on full-time jobs, but for part-time pay," and that was in 1965. But could Dr. King ever have imagined that in the United States of America in 1992, in a cold day in January, corpses would be strewn across the city streets of homeless people who had the life literally frozen out of them? That good and decent people, you and I, our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, would train themselves to step gingerly around the women and men in tattered rags, averting our eyes, pretending not to hear their mumbled entreaties, and never questioning where those people went when it was time to go home. What would Dr. King say about that? Dr. King knew the Ku Klux Klan. He had faced 3,000 Klansmen in Albany in 1962. In St. Augustine, Florida in 1963, the Klan had kidnapped the leaders of the local movement and were on the verge of incinerating them when the local sheriff intervened. In Selma, the Klan openly joined ranks with the state troopers attacking the marchers on the Pettus Perry Bridge. What would Dr. King say about his country, 1992, an ex-Klansman running for president? Dr. King had a particularly keen sensitivity to the needs and interests of African American, of all children, but in particular of his African American children, and to their desire to participate in the movement, in the liberation struggle. In 1963, in Birmingham, Dr. King organized a march of 6,000 children, ranging in age from 6 to 16. And this entire beautiful crusade of children, from the youngest to the oldest, were all arrested and carted away in wagons as they marched and sang, "We Shall Overcome," from the 16th Street Baptist Church into the town. People all across the country were scandalized and criticized Dr. King for what they called the use of children. But these critics fell silent when Dr. King asked them, "Where were you with your protective words when down through the years Negro infants were born into ghettos, taking their first breath of life in a social atmosphere where the fresh air of freedom was crowded out by the stench of discrimination?" What would Dr. King say today in 1992 if we told him that just days ago 2 little black children in New York City had their faces painted with white shoe polish by a group of white young people who thought it was funny? Black youth 3 times as likely to be unemployed as whites, 1 million black young people out of school, thousands more unable to read, to write, and to compute. What would Dr. King say about the plight of our children today in 1992? What could a young child say looking back at the movement in 1960, a young child with no home, with barely a school to attend? What could such a child say about what that movement had actually accomplished? Today is much more than a birthday celebration, but it is that as well. It's a marking of time with a man who is a contemporary of ours, a celebration of the life, as Marcus has said, of a very young man who began his public life at the age of 26. 26, think of that. Those of you who are 19, 20, 21, and 22 who will graduate from MIT and go on to other things. Martin King in Montgomery, when he was called upon to take the leadership of that movement, was 26. And from that moment on, he gave us all he had: his voice, his dreams, his vision of a new world, a new ethic, a new peace, a new America. All that he had, he gave it to us in the 12 years and 4 months until he was struck down. We honor Dr. King not only for that gift, but for lifting us in our despair now and then, for showing us the way to greater community. And in committing ourselves to Dr. King and honoring him, what we commit ourselves to is action. Action in the right times and in what our enemies might call the wrong times. We pay you the tribute we know you would treasure most by committing ourselves for all the years we have left to action. Happy birthday, Dr. King.
Thank you, Judge Burnham, for your observations, for your comments, and most importantly, for a very important lesson in history. And for the young folks here, I hope one thing you take away from this, if nothing else, is the fact that don't necessarily listen to what's written in the papers. Go look for yourself for the fuller story. A lot more happens than we're told about. We will now have some musical selections. Performing for us today is someone who is, in an important sense, an alum of MIT. Mr. Charles Thomas was employed here in the admissions office and recently left us for full-time musical studies at the New England Conservatory of Music. He will be accompanied today by a prominent jazz musician in the greater Boston area, Mr. George Russell, who leads the George Russell Trio. Charles?
Sunday, come Sunday, that's the day.
I'll tell you, Charles, you're going to hurt yourself doing that. Well, now I'd like to ask Reverend Brown if she would give the benediction as we close today's program. Reverend Brown?
Bow your heads with me, please. Lord, we thank you for the dreamer. We thank you for the dream. And Lord, we're apologizing because the dream has not yet become a reality. We've not yet overcome. There's much work left to do. There's much unfinished business here in this nation. But we're asking for your help, Lord. As we leave this place, we go out with the dream renewed, with a newer understanding of the vision and that which is required, of the responsibility that we now have, having had the vision explained. Father, make us dreamers, make us workers, Lord God. Let not our thoughts be idle, let not our hands be empty, but put our arms, Lord, to the task at hand to bring the vision into a reality and to stop this dream from becoming a nightmare. Lord, we ask your blessing on the food that we are about to partake also. Allow it to give us the strength necessary, Lord, to bring the vision into reality. It's a difficult job. It's a hard job. But we leave here, dear God, ready to work. As you leave this place, but not his presence, remember that only you can make the dream a reality. In his son's name we pray. Amen.